Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode number 470 of For Immediate Release. I'm Shel Holtz.
And I'm Neville Hobson. In this short form episode of For Immediate Release, we're looking at a new development from Creative Commons that's aimed squarely at the intersection of AI, copyright, and open knowledge. It's called CC Signals, and it could become a defining tool for how content is treated in the AI era. Creative Commons is the non-profit behind the well-known Creative Commons copyright licenses that enable creators to share their work and use that of others legally and openly. This new project is their response to the rise of AI and the vast amount of public web data being used to train AI models, often without clear rules or consent. We'll explore CC Signals in lay terms and what it means for communicators right after this. For more than 20 years, Creative Commons has enabled millions of creators to share their work while retaining rights through open licenses. But now, with AI models scraping the internet at scale, there's a new challenge. How can content owners set clear expectations for whether and how their work should be reused by algorithms training AI models? That's where CC Signals comes in. It's a proposed framework that lets dataset holders express preferences for how their content can be reused, for example, in training AI, based on legal, technical, and ethical guidelines. In simple terms, dataset holders means any individual, organization, or platform that owns, manages, or has control over a collection of data that could be used to train AI models. Rather than locking everything down behind paywalls or blocking bots entirely, CC Signals offers a middle path, a way to sustain the open web by encouraging responsible AI use. It's built on values like recognition, reciprocity, and sustainability, echoing the same ethos that shaped Creative Commons copyright licenses 2 decades ago. For communicators, this matters. First, it's a story about the governance of knowledge, how it's shared, who benefits, and what kind of AI future we want to support. Second, it's an opportunity to engage with new norms, to advise organizations on data sharing policies, and to help shape a framework that could become foundational in the age of machine learning. CC Signals is not just a technical tool, it's also a social contract built on fairness and the shared benefit of respect for creators, clearer norms for AI developers, and more sustainable access to open data for all. The framework is currently in very early development. Creative Commons is gathering public feedback and input now, aiming for an alpha launch in November 2025. We'll have a link to the website in the show notes. So, Shel, I think this is worth taking part in shaping and developing new tools, new norms, and new forms of cooperation for the age of AI.
Yeah, as long as there's something like an open comment period, I think anybody who has an interest in this should certainly participate. Creative Commons has the credentials to undertake this. I've been using Creative Commons licenses since they first became available. My blog is on a Creative Commons license. Virtually every presentation I deliver uses an attribution license. This podcast is licensed under Creative Commons. So I think they do really good work. Remember, the core principle behind the Creative Commons concept was that it has to be a defensible case in court. You can't just say this is a thing and then have somebody violate your license, take them to court, and have it thrown out. This is valid legal underpinnings that they have with the work that they do. So I'm really happy to see them doing this. Of course, it's not the only initiative of its kind out there right now. The Authors Guild has one called Human Authored Certification. It's supposedly a certification system for authors and publishers to label books and other written works as human authored. There's a U.S. Copyright Office initiative on AI. There's an open letter from authors to publishers and various licensing and regulation proposals. Probably the most interesting recent development in all of this is Bartz versus Anthropic. This was a case in the U.S. where a judge granted summary judgment in favor of Anthropic over the question about whether using copyrighted books to train its large language model constitutes fair use. And the court said, yup, it does. It's quintessentially transformative, offering a potential shield for AI companies facing similar copyright challenges. So the legal system is already weighing in, and how owners of content in a system, and I think it's really fascinating that Creative Commons acknowledges that AI needs this content, that
Yeah.
AI needs access to all of this material in the open web, and copyright needs rethinking in order to accommodate this. What did they say? I think I wrote it down. Ideas, facts, and other building blocks of knowledge cannot be owned. Expanding copyright to control AI training risks stifling innovation and access to knowledge. The future depends on shared expectations and responsible use. And then they go on to say, of course, that any viable solution needs to be legally grounded, technically interoperable, and backed by the collective action of humans. So I think this is a great initiative. I hope it goes somewhere. Even the original Creative Commons never really took off the way I was hoping it would. It works for those who use it, but I don't know how many people out there creating content even know it exists. Yet we need these conversations, we need these options, and you never know, given their track record in producing a quality product, this might be the answer for a lot of people. We'll have to see how it shakes out. But you're absolutely right. Weigh in.
Yeah. I mean, they are soliciting feedback from anyone and everyone who has an opinion. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is very early stage development. So much of the feedback I'm seeing on the GitHub, and there's a link to that in the show notes, is early stage feedback from very technical people. It's focused a lot on that. So persevere. The point of, I guess, talking about this in the way we are is this is look beyond the technicalities. Creative Commons has published a project page that summarizes it all. They say for the technical detail, click here, as it were, and you can then go to something and really get down a rabbit hole in the technical aspects of this. But for us normal folk, communicators, we need to understand it more simply. And this is why it's worth having this conversation today about this, I think, to kind of say, and you said something interesting because that's been my view throughout too. I started using Creative Commons myself back in 2004, literally when they started. And like you, everything I share publicly with anyone that I've added my intellectual property to carries a Creative Commons license. One of the beauties of CC licenses is that the thing you normally confront straight away when you come across one is written in plain English. Literally no legalese. It's at pains to point out quite clearly that that's not the contract. You need to read the legal one. And they have published a variety of different types of contract back by legal definitions of the terms they're using and the how it all is supposed to work that are valid in different legal jurisdictions. So it's not limited to one jurisdiction. Like you mentioned, what's going on in the US, that's US law only. This is valid in many other countries. In fact, the one I use is an international license that is valid in multiple countries. So if this leads to something like that I think would make it very attractive. But if the simpler it is to understand and use, the more likelihood it is that it will get pickup. Like you, I'm disappointed that Creative Commons copyright licenses never really rocketed into the stratosphere as it seemed they might. There were some notable legal challenges by the 2000s that didn't really kind of gain the headlines that it might have done, I suppose. But it showed that these test cases that it did have the legal teeth behind it all. So this, though, like I said, this is in the development stage. And it does present, I believe, a great opportunity for communicators to help shape the development of this. So not all the techies are in there. And that's where we step into the thing too, because you can help shape the framework that could become that foundation that I mentioned earlier. So it's a great opportunity.
It is. And a couple thoughts. One is one of those test cases with the Creative Commons involved Adam Curry. In fact, I think it was
the famous one, actually,
the
famous
Podfather.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a photo that was licensed under Creative Commons. Somebody
That's
used
right.
it in a way that violated that license. He took them to court. I believe it was in the Netherlands.
In
and
Amsterdam,
won.
yeah. He won this.
He won. So that was the first test case. The plain language behind the Creative Commons, I think, is important. And they also use visual cues. They have different icons for the different licenses. So they go to great pains to make it easy to understand these things at various tiers. In terms of communicators getting involved, I absolutely agree that we should. The question is how? Beyond commenting, is it possible to band together? I'm thinking of the Venice Pledge that came out of the Global Alliance for Public Relations and Communications. This is the umbrella organization that represents most of the communication associations in the world: IEBC, PRSA, CIPR, CPRS, all of those organizations belong to the Global Alliance. And they just a couple of weeks ago released the Venice Pledge, which is there, and they're asking communications professionals and companies, in fact, to sign on to the pledge. And it's a set of principles around ethical use of AI. So I'm wondering, is it possible for the Global Alliance to weigh in on this, representing all of the communicators out there, as opposed to, or in addition to, everybody going in and sharing their own comments?
In addition to, so they totally could do that. Someone representing that Global Alliance goes there, clicks that link, starts a conversation there. But I think you're absolutely right. And that, bringing it back to the Creative Commons copyright license, maybe that was one of the issues behind its lack of mega stardom, as it were, that there wasn't this kind of thing going on at the time. But that was a different era. Here, everything's online, and awareness is huge about what the pros and cons are of all of this. So they would be a good candidate in light of the Venice Principles, which I think you discussed that in a previous episode, right?
Monthly, I think you raised that. Yeah, and the principles in the pledge.
Right. So that must be relevant to this. So this is definitely the moment for this, because it's early stage. They're looking for feedback. They want suggestions. They want input from anyone who cares to suggest these things. This is the time for this.
Well, I happen to know a couple of members of the Global Alliance board, so I think I'll
give them the link to the podcast.
Well, I think a couple of them listen anyway. And that'll be a 30 for this episode of For Immediate Release.